Hello everyone, and happy Fast Friday. I'm happy to be back with you for another day of fasting and praying. This week I've been doing a lot of thinking about my interactions with people in my role at OCF and to a lesser degree at Biola, but more specifically my role as a spiritual director. As a director, I spend my time talking with people about their relationship with God. And often that turns to pain and grief and the different ways in which people are suffering and how that relates to their understanding of God and their relationship with Him. Probably the most painful thing that I've observed is not the circumstances of people's suffering, although that is great and often very traumatic, but it's those very rare occasions where someone has given up on God and has chosen instead to put their hope, find their comfort in something else. A devout believer will experience pain and suffering, and maybe even have moments or extended periods of time of deep confusion or disillusionment or even just disappointment in how God responds to them. But someone who is devoutly following Christ will always come back to their first love, will always come back to a place of trust and hope in God. The Psalms give us language for both our frustration and pain and language of returning in hope, returning in trust. On Sunday, Brandon highlighted for us the way in which David presented two different forms of dealing with suffering in Psalm 4. If you recall, Israel was experiencing a drought or a famine, and people were suffering. And what David noted is that some people in their pain had turned away from God and were turning to idols to get what they want or needed. They were turning to idols or something else to get their needs met. And the Psalms, this psalm in particular, Psalm 4, is an incredible platform for us to take a look at what is going on in our own hearts as it pertains to suffering. There probably is no greater litmus test than pain, because pain either causes us to run toward God or to run away from God. So today what we're going to look at is how we might be reacting to God in our pain. And we're going to maybe consider fasting in a little different way than we've been practicing up to this point. One of the things that we need to keep in mind is that suffering is brought about by things in our environment. Sometimes it's things that have been done to us. Sometimes it's choices we've made. Sometimes it has nothing to do with anybody. It might be illness. It might be tragedy. Things that have nothing to do with us. Sometimes our pain and suffering is brought on by disillusionment or disappointment in God. So when feeling disappointed by God in prayer, we have to consider Scripture. When crowds gathered and asked Jesus to heal them, Jesus did not heal everyone. When David fasted and prayed for the life of Bathsheba's child, the child still died. If we are expecting prayer and fasting to be a magical tool for acquiring from God what we desire, we will often be disappointed. Scripture is clear that not every prayer is answered the way we desire it to be answered. And so when that happens, we have a choice to make. We can either run to God, or like the others in Psalm 4, we can run from God to other things and hope for something better than what God could give us. So the question we're going to be asking today in our time of prayer is, what are those things that I run to when I feel let down by God? We've had a lot of extra time to maybe run to some other things during our time of isolation. What things have you been running to? Have you been running to food or alcohol or other substances? Have you been running to pleasure or fantasy or movies to distract you, TV, video games? What are those things that you run to when you feel like God just isn't meeting your needs and you feel unsettled, or you even feel like you're in deep pain? Do we dabble in those things that we run to, or do we explode into full-blown rebellion? My guess is that most of us don't start out in full-blown rebellion, but that there is a slow fade into turning from God that happens. Today we need to wrestle with the question of whether we are standing at the precipice of that slippery slope, or are we approaching the slippery slope because our lives are feeling unsatisfied right now, or we're suffering in some way. That slow fade probably starts with allowing your mind to wander. And perhaps that slow fade turns into something bigger. And the more we allow ourselves to spend time in that place that we know we shouldn't go, the more at ease we become in that place, allowing that slide to become more and more inviting and perhaps a little more dangerous. We generally don't go from 0 to 100. There's steps in between. So today, with the examples we have in Psalm 4, we want to avoid that slow fade into turning from God. Whatever your distraction is, your consolation, or maybe even your idol might be, we want to look at how we can allow God to come in and be the thing that nourishes us and calms us and comforts us instead of those things. So today in your prayer time, I want to show you this in case you haven't been seeing these. These are what the prayer exercises look like. You can find this in the email that Shannon sent you today. It has a link to this prayer exercise that you can print out, and it also has a link to this video. But you'll notice on this side it has the Psalm 4, and on the other side over here, it gives you steps of how to walk through engaging with the Psalm. It gives you instructions on how to talk to the Lord about what is going on in your own heart as it pertains to some of these issues. So I hope that you will print that out and use it. And it's going to ask you to fast from one of these things that you find yourself turning to instead of God. Generally, we fast from food or drink or TV, but today I want you to consider fasting from that thing that might be putting you on the slippery slope. And not just today, but I'm going to ask you to fast from it all week if you're willing, and see what it might be like to trust God in those places of being unsettled, in those places of distress. Because like we see with David and all the other psalmists, the only place to find our true rest and our true peace is in Jesus Christ. So today, as you spend time in prayer, I pray that you will be blessed. I pray that you will be present and honest with the Lord and honest with yourself, and that you will find great love and acceptance from the Lord as you come to Him with some of these places that you're finding comfort outside of Him. So be blessed today, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.